A Dragon's Warmth by Littlelil1519. Harry was always cold. It was a cold that existed deep within his bones, slowly icing its way to his skin, freezing his cells and veins. He was therefore always seeking out warmth from external sources. Fire, sweaters, Hermione and Ron if he could, or some other Weasley when he was drunk enough. Harry was in fact so used to the cold that he was properly in love with warmth, whatever the source. He loved his friends, he loved sitting in front of the fire, he loved the sun, and he loved his copious amounts of sweaters and blankets. He wasn't sure why he was so cold. Hermione guessed it was his state of constant malnourishment from being starved as a child, and then again on their, lovingly referred to, extended camping trip. Ron guessed it was also an after-effect of being crucioed so many times throughout the war, as he stands by the fact that Harry was never this cold before 4th year. Harry thinks it's a mixture of both, plus a secret third option, an option he kept only for himself and the depths of darkness that permeated his room at night, an option he only likes to think in his head. Since he had lost the part of Voldemort's soul that lived in him, fed on him, parasitically attached to him in order to live, he felt empty, as cold on the inside as on the outside. Maybe when he died he lost that part of him that could keep him warm. Maybe it was because he died. Who knows? But, despite the reasons, spoken and thought, no one had ever seemed to have a solution. Even Hermione was at a loss. So Harry made sure to use his inheritance wisely and buy any warm thing he could find. He was always dressed in the warmest coats, the warmest socks, and layers of Dudley's old hand-me-downs. And when he was at Hogwarts during his 8th year, he bought as many sweaters, blankets and socks as he could possibly fit in his trunk. Thanks to Hermione's genius with undetected extension charms, it was nearly everything except a blanket that Teddy had become particularly attached to, so Harry couldn't bear to take it from him. His fateful roommate, Draco Malfoy of all people, did not seem to understand Harry's need for warmth at first. How could the saviour of the wizarding world face a problem as easy as being cold and not be able to fix it? When Harry first came back to their room shivering, in September no less, on a warm, almost sweltering humid day, Draco simply asked why he didn't use a heating charm, if he was so cold. "They work better from other people, plus I would need them constantly, and that isn't very sustainable," Harry had replied, his teeth chattering. He didn't catch the brief look of concern that crossed Draco's face as he turned and buried himself under blankets in an effort to warm up. When Harry felt the syrupy warmth of magic spread across his back, he looked over to Draco. Draco was simply reading, his gaze focused on the book in his hands, but Harry had not been imagining the warming charm he felt from his head to his toes. Ron's felt like his hugs, and Hermione's felt like a warm cup of cocoa, while Draco's felt like a smouldering flame, with a hint of spice as it wound around his shoulders. Harry just smiled and snuggled further into the warmth, greedily soaking it up before his next class. Draco and Harry were also paired in almost every single class, including potions. Every teacher was relying on the two to sort out their inter-house unity problems. The first day, everyone expected a fight, the room tensing and holding its breath when the pair was announced. But they had simply nodded to each other and sat down at the same table. Unbeknownst to everyone else, they had already buried the hatchet over the summer, through a couple of letters and an agreed-upon truce for the sake of weariness. So they just simply started to work on the potion. Harry's hand reacted harshly to the cold of the dungeons, and as such, shook too hard or were generally unusable. When Draco first saw Harry's hands shake chopping ingredients, he simply placed his hands over Harry's to stop him and gently took the knife, cutting board and ingredients. "You can stir," was all he said. Draco also sent over a warming charm to Harry's hands, causing Harry's lips to turn up in a soft smile. The result startled Draco so much he dropped the knife onto the floor. Draco felt his cheeks flush, but the gentle huff of laughter that came from Harry was worth it. Many nights in the shared 8th year common room, Hermione, Ron and Harry sat on the chairs closest to the fire. Harry usually sat right next to the fire and did his work while Hermione and Ron shared a couch a little further away from the blessed heat that never seemed to scorch Harry. Every so often, Harry would nibble on the end of his quill, lost in thought over a sentence. His mind free to work now that it wasn't taken up by constantly craning his neck to get a glimpse of death right behind his shoulder. He was becoming quite adept at charms. Draco would sit on the outer edge of the circular room, which gave him the perfect angle to watch the nightly routine unfold. Hermione and Ron would usually leave for bed after everyone else, but before Harry. Harry would shake his head when they asked if he was coming with them, whispering a soft goodnight. Draco would then wait about 10 minutes to make sure no one had forgotten anything, and when the coast was clear, that's when Draco silently padded over to sit by him. Every night, like clockwork, Draco would come to sit next to Harry. Draco always sat further away from the fire, warmed by the mere knowledge that he would sit next to Harry. Sometimes they would do homework. Sometimes they would both stare into the flames until the embers glowed and Draco would gently lead Harry back to the room. Other times they talked. They whispered secrets, dreams and fears, the only good things worth whispering. Harry shared about horcruxes, hunts and a blinding white that would mix with the bright green inside his dreams. Draco whispered about Nagini, torture, and his nights spent hearing distant screams of his classmates, people he grew up with haunting him. They found solace in those late nights. They found someone who could understand and listen. They found a sacred feeling resembling peace, which was too delicate to name aloud. Under the cover of the night they were able to feel free, despite or perhaps because of the curtains of darkness that shrouded them away from the baseness of the day. One night, as the fire grew smaller, Harry started absent-mindedly rubbing his hands. He was recounting his tale of defeating the basilisk, Fawkes crying to save him, Tom Riddle and his first Horcrux death shared together. Draco reached over and held Harry's hands in his own. Harry looked up a bit startled, but Draco merely rubbed Harry's hands and kept his gentle hold on them. Then Draco looked up and met Harry's eyes. Harry thought he looked a little scared, as though Harry would yell at him or yank his hands away and shatter what was so innocent and new between them. So Harry said nothing, just returned the grip, and settled on telling Draco about the latest news he got about Teddy from Andromeda. Draco's shoulders returned to their normal position, and that's how they started holding hands. The whispers never reached the light of day, but for some inexplicable reason the hand-holding broke through. Hermione merely glanced at their hand during breakfast at the shared 8th year table and then started a conversation with Draco about their latest arithmancy homework. She once came back down to the common room to find the boys slumped in each other, asleep before the last embers of the fire. She accidentally dropped her book on the way up the stairs, jolting them both awake so they could sleep in a real bed. She wasn't surprised at this development. Ron gaped a bit at Harry, and when Harry shrugged, Ron shrugged too, turning his attention to the spread in front of him. Draco would later get an interrogation by Hermione and Ron in the library when Harry wasn't there, but it wasn't as horrible as he thought it would be. He knew it was coming ever since their relationship began to see the light of the sun. They walked into the library and sat down next to him before simply asking him why. "His hands are cold," is all Draco could muster to say. Hermione looked into Draco's eyes, seeing the real answer burn in his eyes, like the fire and warmth her Harry had grown to love. "If you hurt him, we'll kill you," Ron finished for her. Then they set their stuff down at their table and worked on homework, studying with Draco as though they had done this their whole lives. Harry walked into the library later to find them studying together. Draco met his eyes and shrugged, feeling still slightly panicked but trying to hide it. When Harry came and sat down as well, he sat between Hermione and Ron, who had made space for him naturally, and then reached out with his feet and intertwined his ankles with Draco's, while reaching for Hermione's potion paper. He may have been trying at school now, but potions were still elusive to him. Draco enjoyed having Harry so close. He enjoyed the soft touches, the gentleness so shocking from a childhood full of firm, tough embraces or strikes. The gentleness coming from Harry Potter was something he could never figure out. How could a man be so beaten down by the world, still possess such kindness and gentleness, and then freely hand it to his enemy? One night he confessed this in whispers to Harry in front of the fire. Harry whispered back about relatives who used harsh words, even harsher things for punishment, about wicked, cold, lonely nights in a cupboard too small for a growing boy, about finding out about gentle touches of love at age 11 when Hermione held his hand one day while walking to class, just on a whim. His love of soft touches and words of reassurance was planted and grew under the care of Hermione, Hagrid and the Weasleys. Draco wanted to give all the gentleness and sparkling kindness he possessed to the soft Harry he had come to know, the boy whose hands were too cold. Harry decided to stay at Hogwarts for one last Christmas holiday, so when he woke up on Christmas Day, he and Draco opened their present together. Harry eventually got to the bottom of the pile and opened a thin package that was wrapped in an elegant black paper with a singular red bow on top. He shakily undid the paper, and he opened the lid of the revealed box to find a striking set of 3 gloves, black, white, and brown. "They're the warmest but thinnest pairs of gloves I could find. They have warming charms woven into the fabric, and they should be easy for all they wear. I thought you might like them," Draco finally said as Harry stared down at them. Harry looked up at Draco with tears in his eyes. Harry slipped on a pair and felt his hands warm up. It was wonderful, and Harry knew he would wear these almost constantly. They were perfect. Almost. They fit his hands so well, and they were so beautifully warm, but it wasn't how he wanted to warm his hands. Harry realised with startling clarity. He wanted Draco. He wanted Draco to keep him warm. "They're almost perfect, Draco. Thank you," he said, waiting for Draco's indignant scoff. "Almost," Draco scoffed, just as planned. Harry set down his gloves and then scrambled out of his mound of blankets to get to Draco's bed. He couldn't help himself any more. He felt like he was going crazy with how much he wanted Draco, how much he wanted endless nights and days with him, how much he wanted to give Draco, how much he loved Draco. "I much prefer you keeping me warm," Harry said as he finally pressed his cold lips to Draco's warm ones. So they added kissing to their routine as well, fitting perfectly between whispered declarations and hand-holding in the corridors. Harry does absolutely love the things that keep him warm, especially those that fill up his soul as well, and with Draco, Harry finally felt warm inside and out. Thank you for listening all the way to the end, and I hope to see you next time.